facing the police every single day. Hey, Charlotte County, this is Sherri County Cop Watch, and I gotta do a story on before I do a screen read. Just kidding, I can't do a screen read on this because somebody pulled this document. This is one actual tiny little good thing that this fucking piece of shit Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prummell is doing, and that is he's actually posting some, not all, because he knows a lot of them are bad, records that people are pulling on their portal for record request. And somebody requested all the drug busts. They were actually trying to get just the fentanyl ones. They wouldn't give it to them. I know if I asked for this fucking document, I can't even believe what they would charge me. But here's what we got going on here. You know and I know, we used to have a war on alcohol. It's called Prohibition. We fucking absolutely failed at it. That's how we got jury nullification. Because people were sick of the war. So they would bring these people busted for alcohol in, and the jury would say, no, fuck you. This is freedom, man. What you're doing is tyranny, and we stopped prohibition. So then we had to switch to a new thing. Let's do the war on drugs. That's when they started a commercial that if the black man and the Mexican smokes that marijuana, he's going to rape your white wife. And we fucking banned it for how many years? And it's still banned here. You can only get it medically. It's fucking bullshit. We should be able to grow our own. God made it, you dick. And by the way, mushrooms are coming up now too, because that's absolutely good for resetting your brain. PTSD, all that shit. I got PTSD for dealing with this fucking piece of shit. And the other piece of shit, Pam Davis, put to go to police station. Anyways, police traumatic stress disorder. But that's what you got here. The war on drugs in 9 years since the sheriff has been in control. Look at this little tab here. And like I said, I can't do a screen read on it because this is insane. But here you go. Ready, set. I'm going to drag it quick. Ready, set. Bang. 62,913 charges on people for the war on drugs. Oh my fucking God, in 9 years. And people say, we're not policing for profit. We don't have a problem with the police. Really? You fucking sheep. Our founding fathers would consider you a traitor to the fucking state, man. And who knows what they would have did to you back then. I know what they did to the Red Coat British police that were only taxing us, trying to take our guns, and illegally enter our house. That's why we have the Fourth Amendment. They were writing a fucking writ right on your steps. It was insane. But this is how out of control it is right here. 62,000 fucking charges for drugs in 9 years under this fucking Nazi. This is the bitch that needs to go to prison for his crimes against the people. This shit is victimless crimes. You know, and then they say, well, he sold to somebody and he died. Guess what? Hey, unless that motherfucker actually puts it in the other person's mouth, then you can charge him with fucking premeditated murder or murder or whatever. That's literally what they're trying to charge these people that have the meth and the fentanyl. Bullshit. The person that bought it, that's their choice. That's not, you didn't fucking shove it down their throat, and yet they're crucifying him, and then the jail time that they're getting on this shit is insane. 62,000 fucking charges for drugs. 9 years under this fucking Nazi who hates America, hates freedom. It's disgusting. Take your goddamn country back while you still can. Why do you think they're trying to take the guns? Because they don't want you to take it back. Wake the fuck up, sheeple.
Here as the only Republican co-sponsor of the MORE Act, and I'm voting for it. Because the federal government has lied to the people of this country about marijuana for a generation. We have seen a generation, particularly of black and brown youth, locked up for offenses that should have not resulted in any incarceration whatsoever.
Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz there with those fiery words in support of the Democrats' bill that passed the House today to decriminalize marijuana. Gaetz was one of just 5 Republicans who joined 222 Democrats in voting for the bill. The law would also require federal courts to release inmates serving sentences for nonviolent marijuana offenses. It was the first time ever either chamber passed a bill to legalize marijuana. Right now, the legislation is not expected to pass in the Senate. But it is clear that attitudes about drugs, and more specifically their relationship to the criminal justice system, are changing in this country. And there is no clearer example than in Oregon, where voters passed a measure decriminalizing drug possession, ending years of prohibition, but also raising new questions. Our Clayton Sandell has this in-depth look.
It was one of the first shots in a new war.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
President Nixon officially launching America's war on drugs. Later, First Lady Nancy Reagan and her mantra of just say no.
We want you to help us create an outspoken intolerance for drug use.
This is your brain on drugs.
And those iconic anti-drug commercials trying to sway the public to join the fight.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
Nearly 50 years later, after countless drug seizures, arrests, a crack cocaine epidemic, and now a deadly opioid crisis claiming tens of thousands of lives every year, the country is taking a hard look at the government's never-ending war and its effects.
It really is a failed policy. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it's one of the worst domestic policies that we have in modern history.
I'm a casualty of the war on drugs, but I'm a survivor.
Americans like former heroin user turned drug policy reform advocate Morgan Godwin believe the war on drugs has cost far too much.
Addiction is defined as a failure to respond to negative consequences. So, before I was ever arrested, I'd already been fired from my job, struggled with homelessness. You have all these interpersonal relationships. It's just consequence after consequence after consequence, and yet you can't stop. I just kept using. And so just dangling one more consequence in front of my face was like, yeah, well, put it on my tab. My life is already crap. Everyone I know that overdosed and died was jailed repeatedly first. They are the true casualties of the war on drugs.
But now Oregon, where Morgan lives, is leading the charge in dealing what may be the biggest blow to America's drug policy in half a century.
Oregon is now the first state in the country to decriminalize hard drugs.
The state last month passed Measure 110. The legislation means that users caught carrying what's deemed to be a personal amount of drugs, even the hard stuff like heroin, will be given the option to pay a $100 fine, like a traffic ticket, or complete a health assessment that could provide them with access to treatment. This means no more arrests and no jail.
We've had conversation with advocates in different parts of the country, and our Oregonian allies really came to us and said, we can do this in Oregon.
Cassandra Frederic is the executive director of Drug Policy Action, the national group behind writing Measure 110 and campaigning for it to pass. She says classifying drug use as criminal is outdated and harmful.
I think for us, it's all about increasing access and options so that people can get access to treatment. And if people choose to go into recovery, that they can, and that we're removing barriers to that. And we're also disrupting the relationship that you have to be criminalized in order to recover.
A whopping 58% of Oregonians voted in favor of the bill, with organizations like the ACLU, local NAACP chapters, and even the Portland DA supporting the measure.
The current enforcement of drug laws is inequitable and ineffective.
But the measure is also getting pushback, and from a surprising source. Many in the addiction recovery community say the law comes up short.
They decriminalized drugs before they actually built a new intervention system that the current court system provides. There are people in treatment today because they were arrested for drug possession.
Tony Vazena is one of many Oregon residents who got into treatment because of an arrest. What substances were you using at the worst?
Okay, so when I was in my addiction at the end, Clayton, I would have taken your wallet.
He struggled with substances for well over a decade.
The turning point for me really was right around the time I had my first kid, and that was the motivation to change. The path for me to get completely sober, took a few years after I had my first kid. I was homeless, got arrested, went to jail, was offered treatment while I was in jail, went to treatment. While I was in treatment, I was given the opportunity to go to college and really enmeshed into a recovery community.
Now 8 years sober, he runs 4D Recovery in Portland, a center aimed at helping addicted youth maintain their sobriety through community. He worries Measure 110 won't do enough to push people into treatment.
Well, I'm just curious if you've thought about that scenario and what might have happened to you had Measure 110 been in place.
The reality is that question keeps me up every night. I run an organization whose mission is to help young people recover, right? And what is the system we need to develop to ensure more people can recover? Potentially, I could have overdosed. Potentially, I would have created, another set of circumstances that would have drastically impacted the rest of my life. We have not created that new intervention system, and we've taken one away. I'm a recipient of an intervention to the criminal justice system. That was the last time that I went to treatment, was a nudge from the judge.
Adrian Burris works with Tony at 4D and says that intervention through the criminal justice system changed his life.
My drug addiction spanned about 5 years, and I just kind of felt like I was at the end of my rope, Now, I got picked up for some pretty significant charges, and that's kind of like what put me on the right path. I ended up getting treatment, and that 5 months that I sat in jail, five or 6 months, was really crucial because I always, over time using drugs, I had the desire to stop, but I couldn't develop the will until I had a substantial amount of time away from the substances.
Are people going to be let go who should be maybe getting arrested and going into treatment?
It's hard for me to say should be getting arrested, but I can say people are going to be let go that should be going to treatment, I'm not saying that getting arrested should be that pathway. I think the whole system needs to change, but in a different way than it has due to this measure.
While there is disagreement about how to best address the addiction crisis through policy, there are significant signs that attitudes toward the war on drugs is changing. A 2019 poll showed that 67% of Americans are in favor of legalizing marijuana.
For example, with marijuana, we've seen increasing support for marijuana legalization trending upwards over the last, couple of decades. And if you look at, opinion polls for other drugs as well, you see that the public doesn't want people who use drugs to go to jail.
On Election Day this year, Oregon was not the only state to take major action on drugs. New Jersey, Montana, Arizona, and South Dakota voted to legalize recreational marijuana, a move crossing party lines. Since 2012, 11 other states and Washington, D.C. voted to legalize marijuana for adults 21 and over. Since 1996, a total of 36 states have legalized medical marijuana.
I'm here in Colorado, where marijuana has been legal recreationally for a long time now, and is just sort of part of the landscape. Where do you see this going as a trend nationwide?
I think the jurisdictions are definitely going to be paying attention to what happens with the Oregon policy. I think it takes effect February 1st, and I think that there's going to be a lot of attention paid to what kind of changes we're seeing in Oregon as a result of the policy.
No one will be watching more closely than Oregonians themselves. The state is in the midst of a growing crisis. Overdose deaths jumped by 70% in the state between April and May of this year, compared to the same period in 2019. And of the more than 330,000 Oregon residents believed to have a substance use disorder, there are only about 1,400 beds to accommodate them if they choose to seek help. Measure 110 aims to greatly expand access to treatment.
What is most exciting about the measure to me is that the definition of treatment is a lot bigger, right? So it's not just inpatient treatment, it's not just outpatient treatment, it's housing, it's harm reduction, it's additional supports that people think that they need to make better choices for themselves.
Morgan hopes Oregon's new measure will provide real opportunities to drug users in need and save them from the pitfalls she faced when she was behind bars.
My government broke my heart. They really did, because I learned in that moment they were not actually there to help me. They punished me for the sake of punishment. There was not a shred of rehabilitation in that moment. I just don't think anyone should have to get arrested first to get the treatment they need. No one should have to get a criminal record to get access to drug treatment. That is unacceptable.
Tony holds hope for the future too.
How optimistic are you that you'll eventually get to the point that you want to see real change happen?
Even though there was some division around what Measure 110 from recovery advocates in Oregon, you know, we're coming back together now collectively around the understanding of what is the work that needs to be done moving forward, and how do we put social justice and, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion at the forefront of that. And because of that, the spirituality of the movement, I don't see us failing.
For ABC News, I'm Clayton Sandell in Colorado.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.